Contrary to popular belief, in Warhammer 3, mo money does not mean mo problems. In fact, mo money normally means you have a lot mo options when it comes to resolving your problems. But before we can do that, we need to figure out just how to make that money in-game. There's a whole bunch of options of how to do it, so let's get started with everyone's favourite thing, taxes. But first, new merch. We're talking all new items like the bodybuilder long sleeve, can't keep me down hoodie, and the no head cap. Everything is on a brand new store linked in the description, and until the end of this month, you can get 5% off store-wide using code NECROMAMI. Really proud of these new pieces, the new store and the quality of the new supplier that we're using, so I'd really appreciate it if you check it out. If you want to get dripped out and be fighting off the guys, gals and non-binary pals with a stick, everything is linked down below, and one more time, that's code NECROMAMI for 5% off everything until the end of the month. Okay, now back to the video. This is the income you receive from your provinces and any buildings in them, and will be one of your main sources of passive income over the course of a game. That said, it'll take quite a while to build up to where you can rely on it for everything, but there's a number of things you can do to speed up this process. First of all, since this gold comes from settlements, having more settlements is obviously only going to bring in more cash in the long run. As well as this, upgrading those you do have to be the largest size they can is another great option to keep the cash coming. Not only do larger settlements grant more gold from the settlement buildings themselves, but they also open up more slots for other buildings and allow you to upgrade them to high tiers. As far as for what buildings bring in cash, this varies from faction to faction, but normally you'll have something in the infrastructure section which will increase your income by a flat amount. Alongside this, you may have options which reduce the cost of recruitment and upkeep, or increase the amount of post-battle loot you gain, and while these won't affect your passive income, they will save or earn you more cash, so are worth picking up. Coastal settlements will also be able to build harbour buildings which normally come with gold income among other things. And lastly, trade resource buildings are always worth building for their resources, which I'll come back to shortly, as well as any extra effects they bring, which are usually somehow related to economy. Lastly, you can further augment the amount of income gained from tax via commandments. Again, this varies from faction to faction, but most have an option which increases tax income, meaning more passive cash from that province in particular. You may have to keep swapping between rush growth or recruitment or whatever else you need at the time, but if a region is doing nothing else and you need the money, setting these up will earn you just a little bit more. Looping back to trading, and this is one of the most seemingly confusing mechanics in the game, but it's actually ludicrously simple. For almost every faction in the game, trade resource buildings will earn you an amount of trade resources. Then, whenever you reach a trade deal with another faction, those resources are exported and you receive gold in return. You don't need to manually set these prices or anything, so it's just a set amount from each resource for each trade deal. So of course, the simplest way to maximize trade income is to build as many trade resource buildings as possible and set up as many trade deals as you can. Once these deals are created, they will rarely be broken unless war is declared, so as you progress through the game and find more resources, your income from trade can skyrocket depending on your faction, location, and allies. This does start off very weak, but if you do it right, can quickly overtake taxes as your most valuable method of passive income. This can sometimes be augmented by lord skills, commandments, and certain lord and hero traits, but this is a lot less common than simple tax income increases, so it will be a lot more dependent on your faction. Speaking of factions, some will be totally incapable of trade, like the Greenskins who can't even harvest the resources, or the Skaven, who nobody likes enough to trade with anyway. This does make trading into a bit of a good guy game, but bad guys get to do a lot more sacking and raiding normally, so it all works out in the end. Aside from trading, diplomacy can be used to gain gold in other, less reliable ways. Any deal you make can add gold to either side to keep things even, so if you're going around making non-aggression pacts or trade agreements with everyone, make sure you use the deal balance button to squeeze as much cash out of them as possible. It might only be smaller amounts, but they add up fast, and it's still smaller amounts you wouldn't have otherwise. Of course, this isn't limited to just packs. Literally, any deal you make can use this to earn a little extra cash. Enter an alliance, take some gold. Making a peace treaty, only if you give me extra gold. Declaring your undying loyalty to an undead dominatrix, I mean, I don't need convincing, but a bit of extra gold sure would be nice. You can even demand gold payments, but this is a little bit more hit and miss and can tend to make everyone view you as a bit of a villain if it's overused. If the other faction doesn't accept, it also means war, so it's really only viable with factions that are much weaker than your own. If you're particularly desperate, you can opt to join other factions' wars in exchange for cash. If you're doing this, I'd advise joining wars against distant factions to reduce the risks yourself. It's all well and good joining some war and getting paid for it, but if that war results in you having to expend armies to actually fight in that war, then you're hardly earning anything, especially if you manage to lose armies or settlements. One last diplomatic option for earning some extra cash is vassals. Making another faction into your vassal means they'll pay a share of their income to you each turn, essentially meaning you're harvesting two sets of passive income at once. This would be a good option were it not for the fact that vassals kinda suck in Total War. You're essentially in a military line, so have to help them with all of their wars, and without you, they'll probably get knocked out in no time flat. 99% of the time, you're better off just taking the lands for yourself, either through confederation if they're friendly, or war if they're not. Certain factions can make much better use of vassals like Slaanesh and the Warriors of Chaos, so if you're playing as one of those, then by all means go for it. Otherwise, take those lands for yourself and build what you want to get that bag. Now for some more active forms of earning gold, and the main one is of course battling. This can earn you money in many ways, so let's rattle off each one and how you can min-max it to get the most possible from every single encounter. After every single battle, you'll gain some post-battle loot. This can vary wildly based on what exactly you beat in that battle and what stage of the game you're at. For example, an army of 6 zombies and a necromancer will be worth a lot less than an endgame full stack of hellstorms led by the Supreme One himself. So in short, battling will earn you money no matter what, so if you can do it without losing units, then go for it. Obviously, if you have to recruit replacements, then that's eating away at your profits, so avoid that whenever you possibly can. Some lords can have skills which increase the amount gained from post-battle loot, so if any lord you're playing as has that option, absolutely go for it, because literally, what is the downside to having more money every time you battle? As well as standard post-battle loot, most factions also have an option with post-battle captives, which earns them some cash. This is normally ransoming the captives back to their owner and sometimes comes with a negative effect for your own faction, so I don't suggest this if there are none, or if you're comfortable you can handle them. Just like post-battle loot, this normally starts out small and increases as the tier of enemy you're fighting gets higher, so is another one you can't rely on early but can enjoy later on when you need a big hit. While you're battling, you might as well also attack some settlements, and while occupying them and filling them with buildings will increase your passive income, looting, sacking or raising can sometimes come with some pretty insane paydays, making them worth doing if you need the extra cash injection. If you pick up some lord skills, this cash can reach some fairly astronomical heights if you beat some higher tier settlements, so even if you're looking to occupy, there's nothing stopping you from hitting them with a cheeky sack first for a bit of extra cash before going back for the occupy later. Now sure, you'll lose some growth and buildings when you take it over, but if you can buy all of that back and have some extra sweet money from it, then it hardly matters. Looting gives you a good in-between where you don't lose as much settlement progress and also gain some cash, whereas raising is pretty much only useful for getting rid of the settlement once sacking it ceases to be useful. Another type of battle that can be very lucrative is quest battles. These normally pop up a little ways into the game for your legendary lords and give you a bit of a challenge in exchange for items and normally gold and other bonus effects. If you can easily complete these, then not only will you be normally making your lords better with better legendary items, but you'll also earn yourself some extra cash on the side. Beyond legendary lords, quests can pop up over the course of the game, giving you all kinds of bonus objectives, and many of these offer cash as a reward. If you can complete them without costing yourself more than the reward and going too far out of your way, then why not? Not completing them, if you can, is just leaving money on the table. Now for something kind of battle adjacent, we have raiding. This is a stance most faction armies can take and earns income based on the income of the foreign province they are standing in. Depending where you stand your armies, this can actually net you quite a lot of cash per turn, but it really does come with a number of risks and drawbacks. First of all, it requires your army to basically just stand there to gain this gold, so if the income is less than the upkeep of the army, it's hardly a great use of their time. Secondly, this stance normally comes with several downsides, such as increased army exhaustion upon entering a battle, no replenishments and reduced movement range. This all makes them quite an easy target for nearby hostile armies who will be very motivated to take you out in this weakened state. However, if you can find that unicorn region that is profitable and no enemy armies are nearby to stop you, this can get you quite a bit of change whilst also tanking the local control, which is never a bad thing. Most quote-unquote bad lords have skills to improve this income earned, so if you're playing as a faction that is meant to rely on this, like the Beastmen or the Greenskins, these skills are very worth picking up to maximize things just a little bit more. And I believe that is every way to make money in Warhammer 3. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and if you want more Warhammer 3 guides, then check out this video here on how to start every campaign.